What up, Hyperchange? Welcome to another episode. Today we're going to talk about Snapchat earnings. The company just reported their Q1 2018 financials. The stock is down about 15% to under $12 a share. As I'm recording this episode, it is a bloodbath, and rightfully so. Let's run through these numbers and see what's up. The most important metric that I track for Snapchat is the daily active users, or DAUs. This shows on average how many people are logging into the app. They had a new record this quarter with 191 million people on average signing into the app every day. But what investors are really watching here is not that Snap hit a record, but how fast that user base is growing. And unfortunately, if we take a look at this, the year-over-year growth rate of Snapchat's user base has just fallen off of a cliff since late 2016, down to 15% in Q1 2018, the lowest it has ever been. And I don't think it's any coincidence that if we overlay, when Instagram stories launched, you can see there was a clear deceleration in Snapchat. My thesis is that Instagram stories has really killed the major functionality and use case for why you would want to open the Snapchat app. A ton of data out there showing that Instagram stories is really beating Snap in terms of overall traction. Additionally, revenue growth, which last quarter, now this isn't with Q1, but I just wanted to show you guys that last quarter revenue growth was actually accelerating from 62% to 72%. This was a really promising sign for Snapchat, but unfortunately this quarter growth fell back down to 54%. So now not only is Snapchat's user base growing slower than ever, but their revenue is growing slower than ever, and this trend is about to get much, much worse as well, but more on that in a second. Oh, and important to note here, for Q1 2017, that was the quarter they IPO'd, so I backed out $2 billion of stock compensation and IPO-related expenses to give us, a normalization of what Snap's business would look like. And as you can see, Snapchat, they were able to grow revenue 54% year over year, which is strong, but the operating loss just ballooned almost double what it was the year before. Operating margins of almost negative 200%. So these are just awful numbers for Snapchat, and it doesn't look like it's improving at all. Taking a step back, I wanted to note that I put out these projections for my 2018 financials for Snapchat. Last time they reported was expecting 1.25 billion in revenue on an operating loss of 900 million. Once again, for those 2017 numbers, I adjusted and took out the IPO expenses to normalize. But, what was really interesting is on the conference call, in the prepared remarks, there was a tidbit by the CFO, which I'm going to read you guys here, which does not sound good. First, as we think about our year-over-year revenue growth rates, we are planning for our Q2 growth rate to decelerate substantially from Q1 levels, with growth in auction impressions partially offset by pricing for both Snap Ads and creative tools. What does that mean? Essentially, Snapchat's revenue growth rate is falling off of a cliff next quarter, even slower than the 54%. They're trying to be very upfront about that, so that means it's going to get ugly. I really had previously my estimate was for 51% revenue growth in 2018 with improving losses, but after seeing this quarter, my new estimates, I'm taking about almost 200 million off the top line, making the operating loss significantly worse. Now I'm expecting revenue growth of 30% in 2018 versus the 51% that I had been expecting prior to this report. The bottom line is if Snap can't grow its user base, then they're going to have a really, really tough time growing revenue. And additionally, another note I'd like to highlight from the conference call is this is a quote. It says, while we had an average of 191 million daily active users in Q1, our March average was lower, but still above our Q4 average. So what they're saying here is that it looks like the user base potentially could decline. This would be the first time Snapchat's daily active users have ever declined in a quarter. This is, after huge backlashes for Snapchat's redesign, people like Kylie Jenner and Rihanna tweeting about how they're fed up with the app. It looks like that is actually having a genuine toll on Snapchat's user base, burning through the IPO cash pretty quickly here. They had about 3.24 billion right after they IPO'd in Q1 2017. Now, a year later, they have burned about $1.4 billion worth of cash. They still have 1.82 billion, so that'll be a runway for a while for them. They only burned about 220 million in hard cash during the quarter, so if they keep that run rate, we're looking at about 6 to 10 quarters potentially of cash runway left for Snapchat. So I guess that's a little bit of good news. In terms of gross margin, the last number I'm looking at, Snapchat, they're a software company. They're in the same bucket as Twitter Twitter and Facebook, but Twitter and Facebook have gross margins, in the 70-80% range. Snapchat here posted 15% gross margins in Q1 2018, still, well above the -9% in Q1 2017. But this just shows Snapchat business is nowhere near at the scale that Facebook and Twitter are, at least in terms of being able to serve ads profitably. And this is their Achilles heel and the reason why the company is showing such massive losses. Other last thing here that I think is fascinating to note is that average revenue per user in the US and Canada declined from not only Q4, but from Q3 as well, and was $2.10 in Q1 2018, the lowest it's been in 3 quarters. So this is a really, really worrisome trend. Snapchat should be able to grow its ARPU, average revenue per user, rapidly in North America, just like every other social networking company does, but they're unable to do this, which means, either their ads were overpriced, they were ineffective, less people are paying for ads, there's less people signing into the app. I mean, just overall, a very, very, very bad sign to see average revenue per user declining this early in the growth story. I do think the company still has a chance to turn things around. They have $1.8 billion in cash. That'll last them a while. I think they are very, very popular with the younger demographic. Even I myself feel like too old to understand or even use Snapchat. So I think, if they can really double down on people that are younger than me, Generation Z, and stay as relevant with them as Instagram is with my generation, then Snapchat does have a chance long term, but it seems like every day they're getting closer and closer to just losing that status as the cool social network. I will also say, even at $11 per share, they're at 12 as I'm recording this, but even at $11 per share, assuming about 1.5 billion shares outstanding, this thing has a $16.5 billion market cap. According to my projections, they're gonna do less than 1.1 billion in sales this year, so that they're trading at about 15 times, if not higher, on a price sales basis for a business that is awful, that has low gross margins, that's not making any money. So why is it worth 15 times sales? I mean, this is a story that could fall apart very, very quickly. This was a very, very, very ugly quarter. Would love to know what you guys think in the comments below. Are you counting out Snapchat? Are they going bankrupt? Is it just a matter of time till they burn through all this money? Or do they have a chance? And if they have a chance, please tell me why, because I'm struggling to see it. If you like Hyperchange and you want to support, please check out our Patreon page for more information. Anyway, I'll see you guys next time. Peace.